For close to 60 years, between the 1880s and 1940s, the rate of childlessness was higher among Black compared to white women. At its peak around the 1920s, Black childlessness was 2.4 times higher than white childlessness. By the 40s, the trend had reversed, with Black women being less likely than white women to be childless. By the 60s, the rate of childlessness converged at around 12 to 15%. The reasons for childlessness, especially hard economic times, social norms, and psychological stress, show consistency across racial lines. Noteworthy, the living conditions of the Black community were significantly worse than those of the white community, which could explain the higher levels of childlessness. Racial discrimination and segregation translated into inequality in other aspects, including access to reproductive care, housing, schooling, remuneration, and economic opportunities, among others. Some sources suggest that the deterioration of health among the Black community, especially through venereal diseases such as gonorrhea and syphilis, in the first 3 decades of the 20th century significantly influenced their reproductive patterns. The Social Security Act of 1935 really strengthened the government's support for health services. Title VI put money into public health, which resulted in a decline in childlessness in the Black community. In the second half of the 20th century, improved living conditions and educational attainment in the Black community reduced childlessness rates. Between 1960 and 2009, the share of Blacks graduating high school rose from 20% to around 85%, with the rates of whites going from 43.2% around the same period to 87.1%. Similarly, the rates of Blacks graduating college in the same period went from 3.1% to 19%, while that of whites went from 8% to 30%. The incomes of Black families rose more rapidly than those of their white counterparts, especially in the 90s, even though they remained inferior. Recently, changes in union formation and marital patterns have massively affected childlessness rates in the Black community. The share of first unions ending in marriage declined from 25% in the 90s to 12% around 2010. The rate of cohabitation increased from 35% to 49% in the same period. The rate of reproductive aged Black women not in unions hardly changed between the 90s and the 2010s, with those who were married back then transitioning into non-formal unions. The share of Black married women above 18 years was 31% in 2010, compared to 61% in 1960. The rates for white women declined from 74% to 55%. The fertility rates of unmarried Black women declined by 17% between the 90s and the 2010s. This rate is twice that on unmarried Hispanic women. The fading essence of marriage in the American society is more pronounced in the Black compared to the white community. Most Black women want to marry and have kids for family continuity and the prestige that comes with it, with most Black women preferring Black men. However, there's a shortage of educated Black men with decent earnings, with one of the leading causes of this phenomenon being the high levels of incarceration rates. Apart from the incarceration rates, Black men are 3 times more likely than Black women to marry someone from a different race. Also, on average, the educational attainments of Black women are a bit higher than those of Black men, with Black women being forced to remain single or marry less educated Black men with reduced earning potentials. Women being more educated and earning more money than men often creates friction around gender roles, with such unions being characterized by an increased likelihood of dissolution.